Why would you move to China? Aren't they communists there? Okay, but like the government controls everything. What about social media? Why?
Hey girl, welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be the very first in a series I'm going to be doing all about my experience in China. Today, we're going to be answering a question that I get a lot, and that is, why did you move to China? All right, so I have 5 reasons for you today as to why I decided to move to China. And the very first reason goes back to 2019, right after I had graduated university. After I graduated, I knew that I did not want to just immediately get a job and join the workforce. I knew that this kind of weird window of opportunity between graduation and getting your first job presents a really unique time where you can really just do something different and really go on an unexpected adventure. I think that, for example, if I would have gotten a job directly after university, there would have been no other time for me to say, oh yeah, now I want to move to China for a year and be an English teacher. It wouldn't have been a possibility because right after graduation and in that first job, you're really wanting to start to build a career. So for me, I wanted to take that window of time and do something that I always wanted to do, and that was to live and work abroad for 1 year. Second reason as to why I decided to move to China is the pay. Honestly, the pay is very important to me. I'm all about my money, and honestly, Korea, Japan, and China, if you didn't know, have the highest pay for foreign teachers. This is absolutely important to me, obviously, because I want to be able to enjoy and live my life in that country, but I also want to be able to save. I want to be able to take some of that money that I've saved and be able to have it when I come back to the States. I didn't want to come back with nothing. So for me, absolutely the pay was one of the motivating factors and reasons as to why I moved to China. So the third reason as to why I decided to move to China was the cost of living. The cost of living in Beijing was honestly quite affordable compared to here in the US. The only thing I would say is that the housing in Beijing was expensive. So for me, I had a 2-bedroom apartment that was very Western style. It was new and it was also in a high-rise building. And my rent was $1,100. That compared to the cost of living here in Kansas City, Missouri, was expensive. But again, it was in a Western style building and it was new. So that obviously is going to come with extra costs. But again, everything else was cheap. So when you move in, you don't pay your utilities monthly like you do here in the US. You actually pay like a card that you charge, and then you put that into the machine, and it will literally just run until it runs out. I think when I moved in, it was in November, and I had put probably 100 into the machine. And it probably wasn't until March where, I was hanging out watching TV one day and the lights just went off. And it was like, oh, I guess I have to put more money in the utilities. So it doesn't run like it does here in the States, where every month your bill could be $50 to $100 or even more, depending on where you live or what kind of house. You just paid it as it needed to be paid. That was the same case with your cell phone. So your cell phone's the same way. You would just kind of top it up as you go. Like you could put 50 in, and then maybe in a month or two, okay, my phone's starting to slow down. And so you'd need to top it up again. So everything else seemed quite cheap, the food and groceries. So for example, when I was teaching and at lunch, we would leave our center and we would always love to go to this one restaurant that was just down the street. And I'm telling you, I think that meal was around $4 or $5, and it was easily enough food to be eaten like for lunch and for dinner, or dinner and lunch another day. So food was very cheap. Groceries, again, depending on where you buy the groceries, they were also quite cheap. So there are lots of little stores and little grocery stores and markets where you can buy food, and it is way more affordable. And compared to the US, you're definitely getting a lot more for your money in China than you are. Fourth reason as to why I moved to China is the culture. I mean, honestly, there is so much culture in China, and it's specifically in Beijing, because you have the Forbidden City, you have Tiananmen Square, you have the Summer Palace, you can get straight to the Great Wall of China there. There's so much culture and history that is surrounding you all of the time. I loved that China was going to be a completely different culture than my own. I loved that it was a mega city. Yes, I live in a city and I've lived in other cities here in the US, but it wasn't literally considered a mega city. Like millions and millions and millions of people all around you all the time. I really wanted to be able to experience that. China is really unique, and I didn't really realize this until I had moved there, that it's a blend of the old and the new. So, for example, you would get on the metro, you'd ride for a few minutes, and you'd come up, and it would literally feel like you'd stepped into the past, because everything would be like the old part of the city, and it would have this old historic architecture. You'd get back on the metro, go for a few more minutes, and then come up, and it would almost feel like you were in the future. Like everything is super modern and brand new. And I think that Beijing has really mixed those two really well. And it was just a really interesting place. And I loved that I would be able to really dive into the culture and the history and the food of this place. All right, so the fifth and final reason as to why I decided to move to China is that no one I knew had ever been there, had ever wanted to go there, had ever dreamt of going there, had ever planned to go there. No one. I knew no one who had ever been to China. And I loved that. I loved that it was something completely new, completely different, and unexpected. I loved that it was kind of like, oh, I'm going to the unknown because I knew no one. And so a lot of the times I just had to research things online, watch videos, and learn that way. But I loved that it was something completely different. And still to this day, even though I've been back for 2 years, I still don't know anyone else who's been to China. And I just love that. I loved that it was really a challenge and something unexpected, and it really made the whole experience quite exhilarating and exciting to plan for. So I love that. If you found this video helpful or interesting, please subscribe and like. Also comment down below, do you have any questions about China? I would love to answer them all. Also, again, stay tuned. This is a series all about my experiences from teaching to the pandemic to ultimately leaving China, and I would love to have you here. But until then, bye guys.